Latin for many. Tick. They'll suck your blood. They'll suck
Politics.
your blood.
Okay, it's politics time, and as promised, Gonz, we got to get caught up. We got to get caught up on the Supreme Court nomination. And it's been an interesting sort of oscillating experience with this particular Supreme Court nomination because there's a lot going on, man. There's so much going on that it's to jump back and forth. I can't tell what's trying to distract from what. And honestly, the Ketanji Brown Jackson nomination for the Supreme Court, is Biden's nomination, it seems so stale in that it is almost entirely, and I think to a sort of distractionary degree, almost entirely rooted in like culture war, which I think is why not a lot of people are paying attention, because we're all just so tired of the culture war.
Yeah.
But we're just going to do a quick review. Last episode I was going to bring this and I was all fired up. And as always, by the time the next episode comes around, so many things happen in the world that it's hard to stay focused on the passion that I had for this story before, but we're going to do it anyway. So this is coming from abcnews.go.com, and the headline is Racial Tension, Political Opportunism, Color Hearings for Ketanji Brown Jackson. Analysis. Ooh, we get an analysis. I'm just going to read a little bit of this one, and then I'm going to jump over to another one because there are some interesting, tips and angles to the whole thing. Mm-hmm. 2 days of intense questioning have come to a close, and all signs point to Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson completing her historic ascent to the nation's highest court. Jackson's confirmation is on track for early April, with or without Republican support. Despite the reality that the outcome of these hearings was essentially a foregone conclusion, takeaways from the hearings are, like much else in Washington these days, colored by divergent ideas on race in America, contentious partisanship, and political opportunism. On the left, much has been made of the fantastic, historic nature of Jackson's nomination. If continued, she will break barriers.
If confirmed.
I'm going to go ahead and make my screen bigger.
Yeah, you're turning
there
old,
we go.
mister.
Those
googly eyes need a little wiping.
The virtual reality, the metaverse is sucking all the life out of my eyes. If confirmed, she will break barriers as the first black woman on the court. It's a point that every Democrat and a few Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee championed. At the same time, Jackson's identity as a black woman was weaponized by many on the right. On Monday, Senator Lindsey Graham's remarks included thinly veiled nod to lawmakers who claimed Biden's Supreme Court pick would be a beneficiary of affirmative action. Ooh, a nod, a veiled nod, Gonz. You know what that means?
Launch the North Korean rockets. That's what Kim Jong-un did. He gave what you called it, the nod, a real gentle nod. When he took off his sunglasses.
Well, here's the veiled nod, Gonz. This is a quote from Lindsey Graham. "You are the beneficiary of a lot," Graham told Jackson. There you go. There's your veiled nod.
That's it?
That's it.
He's so racist, man.
I know. Jackson faced a barrage of questions focused on critical race theory, which she repeatedly said didn't factor into her work as a judge. Republicans sometimes referred to critical race theory in its proper context, referring to a legal concept of how race is embedded in the practices of our nation's institutions, and other times invoked it to describe what has become shorthand in conservative circles for discussions of race in the classroom. The Republican National Committee even posted a graphic on Twitter. Meow, 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 meow. Boring. So that was pretty much the entirety of the conversation being had around Ketanji Brown Jackson. Let me jump over to.
Did she cry during the? She did.
I didn't watch everything.
It looks like while listening to U.S. Senator Cory Booker speak, a single tear runs down the cheek of Supreme Court nominee Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson during a confirmation hearing. So
yes, it's very emotional. But Gonz, Kavanaugh cried too. This is like a thing. Every time we get a new Supreme Justice in there, they cry.
It's probably because it's literally like an initiation. You got to go through so much nonsense. I'm sure it's just a release of emotion.
Yeah.
But
it's also just all theater. That's how it was with Kavanaugh as well. Mm-hmm. So, here's the thing. It's incredibly boring, this whole thing. It's almost just like a sideshow for people who cannot live without culture war, because even though Biden, or I would say the Democratic Party in general, has been leaning away from culture war recently because it started actually not working out very well for them. There is a certain contingent of people, of the population, who still get fired up by the culture war, and the culture war is fed, with the lumber of the lumberjacks that are those who try to, sort of decode secret comments and dog whistles and veiled nods, and when you actually check it out, it's not that interesting, but. Going over here to NBC News, this headline: many black women are familiar with the questions Senator Ted Cruz asked Ketanji Brown Jackson. This week, Ketanji Jackson became the first black woman and the first former public defender to stand before the Senate Judiciary Committee as a Supreme Court Justice nominee. It's an occasion for the history books that should be celebrated righteously and full-heartedly. Yet black women like me are bracing for impact. So again, back to this celebration, the historical nature. You read some of these articles and some of the analysis, and it's almost they repeatedly make a case that even though Biden said, "I'm going to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court." And then people on, the other side say, okay, so wait, you're nominating her because she's a black woman, or how does that work out? And then the left says, no, it's not because she's a black woman, but we definitely should affirm this because it'll be history making to have a black woman on the Supreme Court. So it's this interesting balancing act. But to continue, we all know too well the tightrope we walk in predominantly white institutions. One wrong step, our intrinsic value is weaponized against us. Meaning, black women, their intrinsic value is weaponized against them. I don't know what that. I guarantee that they have intrinsic value, but I don't know what is referring to here that is being weaponized. We got a glimpse of that Monday from Senator Marsha Blackburn, Republican from Tennessee, who suggested that Jackson may have a hidden agenda, and went on to claim that Jackson made clear that she, quote, believes judges must consider critical race theory when deciding criminal defendants. Blackburn followed that up with this question: is it your personal agenda to incorporate critical race areas into our legal systems? This line of questioning continued Tuesday with Senator Ted Cruz, who, in the first opportunity to question the Supreme Court nominee on the public stage, interrogated her with blown-up illustrations from author Ibram X. Kendi's best-selling book, Anti-Racist Baby, and asked if Jackson believed babies are racist. Then, pressed by Cruz on critical race theory, Jackson said, quote, I've never studied critical race theory, and I've never used it. It doesn't come up in the work that I do as a judge. Continue reading. It appears that Blackburn and Cruz pulled this talking point from a speech Jackson made about federal sentencing in criminal cases. In the speech, Jackson said, quote, sentencing is just plain interesting on an intellectual level. In part, it melds together myriad types of law, criminal law, of course, but also administrative law, constitutional law, critical race theory, negotiations, and to some extent, even contracts. It was clear that she never said that it was a must for judges to consider critical race theory, but rather one of the many philosophies that could be reviewed for sentencing. But her words are being skewed. And it goes on and on and on and on. And it's actually incredibly boring, this whole thing. Maybe it's because we've been sort of desensitized by the culture war, or maybe just I have. Maybe some people haven't. I have.
People
it's the
must
same
be burnt
back
out.
and forth, circular. Sort of, I don't know, circular reasoning on both sides. It gets broken down into this minutia, and which is the core principle of today's culture wars. It's like you got to break down the intentions and the exact words and the this and the that, and that's what all the sort of cancel culture thing has got us, is people being very specific about the words they say, and then kind of trying to find, almost like a lawyer, a cancellation lawyer, find little technicalities that get them out of it. But let's see here. There was one. There's so many things wrapped up in this. The Q crowd has kind of been fired up because this was the judge involved, I believe, in remember the shooting up of the pizza restaurant? Was it at Comet Pizza?
Yeah.
Where the guy,
Comet
showed up.
Ping Pong.
Comet Ping Pong,
the guy's
right.
name. He was
And
like a follower.
Yeah, the fellow went in there to free the... Right, yeah. The fellow went in there to free the children from the basement with a gun. I believe that she was the judge that actually convicted that guy. So the connections to the Pizzagate stuff are interesting, which did not help her case when Republicans kind of brought up her history of lenient sentencing for pedophiles.
Yeah.
So
Edgar Madison Welch was the shooter.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe she was the judge for him. And there's this whole section about her historic leniency and some speeches she made about minimum sentencing for pedophiles. Yes?
Nope. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's a video thing that I had in the background changed. Go ahead.
Which I think is fully, again, completely theatrical. Not that it's not true, but if you're gonna start another culture war or try to keep the culture war burning, you gotta incite the Q people to get involved, and they have. They're pretty fired up, not as fired up as the mainstream media wants us to believe, but that's all wrapped up in this as well. The thing that is tiresome to me, and I'm going to stop in a second here and we'll play a clip just for fun. The thing that's tiresome to me is, it seems almost inevitable. It's almost not. None of this means anything because the Democrats have the majority now. Until the midterms, they have the majority. There is nothing that can be done that would make us believe that she would not get her affirmation onto the Supreme Court. So it really all is just a media circus to stoke the flames, to keep the division, even while Biden is claiming to want to unite the country again. But there were some fun little things, and everybody's seen this clip, but I want to play it again here. This is a clip from the hearings along the lines of the culture war, of Ketanji Brown Jackson being asked a question.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
Not a biologist.
Not a biologist. Only a biologist
can define a woman.
Give us define a woman. Yeah. So, look, again, it's just kind of getting into word lawyeriness. You can tell that she, took umbrage at the term define. Can I define a woman? I can't define a woman.
These people
Who could
with the D words?
Define a woman?
The only D word that should exist is Democrat. The rest of the deter. We didn't deter. No, we didn't define. We don't define. We're not biologists.
Right.
We don't define things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Who could define a woman in these days? Only biologists can. So, it was obviously a dodge, and a dodge to an obvious sort of attack question, things like that.
Yeah.
Long story short, she's almost certainly going to be affirmed. There's nothing anybody can do about it. I cannot tell whether this is trying to be a distraction from other stuff or this was timed with all this, other world events in order to draw away from this. And perhaps the conservative strategy is to be as sort of ludicrous. This is the wrong word, but, as sort of inflammatory as possible to try to get it in the news. But it is midterms. So honestly, every single one of these senators who are asking questions are, thinking of the elections.
The implications
it's sort of
the elections. Yeah, they're staging for all that.
Yeah, it's a sort of a parade. It's a parade of virtue signaling on both sides because nothing's going to make a difference. But when you're up for re-election, you can play the clips of how you were just so hard on the Supreme Court nomination and stuff like that. So there you go. A little bit of theater for everybody.
Yeah. And we went a long time at the beginning of Canary Cry NewsTalk, and we actually said, we don't do politics here because that was one of the things I felt was I didn't want to just become another politics show. And we
didn't do anything for a long time. We pretty much exclusively talked about robots and Nephilim for 4 years.
That's true. But this is the kind of story that reminds me of that's why I didn't like talking about politics too much, because what happens is you get sucked into the conversation. You're sort of forced to defend one side of an argument if you get pulled into the argument, is what I'm saying. And this is one of those examples where everything was so divisive that you're sort of, if you're a Republican, you got to toe that Republican line. You got to support your Republicans. And if you're a Democrat, you got to make that Democrat argument. Right. It's just so tiresome. But I think they timed this at a point when, everyone's looking at international affairs. So they're distracted. And then they see this, the partisan tensions of America. And I think they weren't really supposed to be too into this in general. Because I think people are like, okay, all right, yep, back to the.
That's what I mean.
I think boring divide of we got bigger fish to fry right now. But
World War III is about to start, and so let's just sort of create some sound clips with our culture war for later that we can pull out during election time.